Hello and welcome to my review of Icons, a 2013 novel by Margaret Stohl, one half of the duo behind Beautiful Creatures. This story takes place some years after 13 alien crafts or machines or beings, it's not entirely clear which they are in this novel, but they're called Icons and they have landed among 13 Earth cities and basically wiped them out. Everyone has just immediately dropped dead in those cities, and governments of Earth have surrendered to governance from the aliens who set about enslaving people to work in their projects. The LA project is overseen by Ambassador Amer. Outside of the cities and away from their sphere of influence, Doll, or Dolores, lives among a pastoral missionary. Her best friend is Ro, and the two share a special but platonic bond, though it's obvious that Ro wants more. Both Ro and Doll have a special tattoo as well as superpowers. Doll is captured by the sympathizers who work for the ambassador and taken on a train to the city. She escapes after bumping into a mercenary called Fortis, and with his and Ro's aid escapes. They bump into a simper, Lucas, and allow themselves to be recaptured. Lucas also has special powers and is one of them, as is another girl, Tima, who has travelled with the other simpers to recapture them. They are then taken to the ambassador's island base, and though they are nominally prisoners, nothing really much happens to them. And although Lucas can come and go as he pleases, he even takes Doll into LA at one point where they meet the resistance people. They then go back to the island anyway and squabble with Ro and Tima, and this happens a fair bit. Then they try to work out why they have special powers before escaping into LA, leaving Lucas behind, even though he was helping them escape. They then go to the icon above LA to destroy it, the four children's superpowers, hopefully meaning that they can survive the force field around it where no one else can. Most of this novel is narrated in the first person by Doll, with occasional inserts providing background information on the world and particularly the four children. Some of this information is promoted as autopsy records, setting up the idea that our hero dies somewhere in the story, the first-person narrator rather undercutting that suggestion. And while there are novels out there where the first-person narrators don't survive the entire story, depending on your opinion of the ending, I've reviewed one of those in Podcast of Mars on this very channel. The problem here is that this is the current era, and killing off a female protagonist is a lot less likely now than it was in Heinlein's pomp. And the next issue that undercuts any attempt at drama anyway is the actual genre of this book. This is a novel with a lot more angsty teen drama than any kind of gritty sci-fi. Icons ultimately is just another cash-in on the young adult dystopia craze that the success of the Hunger Games caused, and you'd hope that publishers are just shamefully unoriginal and cynical rather than attempting to push some sort of political agenda on young people. But the prevalence of this genre is a little sad, really, and this is not a particularly good example of it. Initially, Doll lives in the mission with Ro, a super devoted bestie who pines after her, but she has no sexual interest in. That I love him more than my own life, it's true. That we swum half naked in the ocean without bothering to even look at each other, also true. That we slept 100 cold nights together on the tiled floors of Bigger's mission kitchen hearth, just the two of us, alongside a bony litter of tired dogs and sheep. That I could no more kiss him than I could one of Bigger's pigs. Of course we know that she'll warm to him in order for the inevitable love triangle to develop, and with the arrival of Lucas, it does. However, Lucas has a love triangle of his own, with Tima's affection for him being equally unrequited. When the four are incarcerated, and I'm using that word very generously, in the embassy, our novel turns into something very much out of the daytime soap opera playbook. Their squabbling back and forth dominates the middle section of the novel, and includes little gems like this one. Nothing. I thought we could hang out, get to know each other, since we had so much fun together today. Tima attempts to flutter her eyelids, but it only looks like she's gotten a cinder in her eye. And I say that to imply touching, in case it wasn't perfectly clear. These are characters that, for the most part, are not particularly easy to warm to, especially when you have exchanges like this. I lift my mouth to his, we kiss, and barely a page later, Ro, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let you kiss me. Now, either Doll or Stohl herself are attempting to rewrite their own history here. My advice in this situation is that if you do something like this and then try to rewrite it in the same scene, the reader is likely to notice, and the best result you can hope for here is them liking or trusting your narrator less. But Doll is never set up as anything other than completely trustworthy, so it isn't an intentional effort to suggest she's something else, it's just rather crap. As is Doll's earlier musing, how little Lucas actually has in common with me, the girl who's never known and never remembered and never looked after. Well, never let a good pity party get in the way of what you, as a narrator or author, have already told us. The children are able to share their innermost thoughts and feelings with each other by rubbing their tattoos together, and she has done that with Ro. The Padre took her into the mission, took care of her and educated her, and the whole group of them seem to love her like a child. She even returns to them at the end of the book, and they welcome her home. Fortis always remembers her continually and pops in and out of the story to help. But if the narrator talking rubbish is one problem with the book, then another is that the interest in this section is sapped by the totally ineffective bad guys. Our four heroes simply do whatever they wish, with very little taking place to actually stop them. They're nominally being studied and are supposed to attend a classroom, but they rarely go there or do anything they don't simply wish to do. It makes the reason for them being there unclear and makes the bad guys look toothless and weak, despite the narrator's attempts to tell us otherwise. With a combination of his power, his friendship with the site's computer, and his position as the ambassador's son, Lucas particularly can just come and go as he pleases. He goes on the mission to capture Doll as some sort of birthday treat, but later learning that this was a gift and that they're being held and studied by lab rats, it raises the unexplained question of why Tima was there as well. The best example of what a mess this section is comes after the trip where Lucas takes Doll to LA. Colonel Catalyst, the evilest of the captors, and we only know that through flashback, not by something he actually does in the course of this story, gathers all of the children into the classroom and lays down the law. I'm glad you have us to be worried about your safety, Furo. That's why I'm having you escorted to your rooms as soon as you've eaten. Nobody leaves their quarters until we get to the bottom of today's little incident. He smiles at all of us, cold as winter. Is that clear? Because I've got a few rooms set aside for you in the pen if you'd feel more secure there. Prison. Another threat. A threat perhaps, but an empty one that's never acted on. Besides, are they not in prison already? Because Doll refers to that very room earlier in the story as the prison classroom. But this is purely a designation because this is absolutely nothing like a prison. In this very scene, Catalyst does not have them escorted to their rooms or even lock them down in their rooms. In fact, Lucas uses the computer to lock Ro and Tima out of their room. You can say all you like about how evil Catalyst is, but you're showing me a passive, ineffective antagonist at best. Further, Fortis, with his own relationship with the computer, can come and go as he pleases as well. This is the worst prison in the history of prisons. Ro has a shank that they don't notice, nor do they notice when he breaks half of it and leaves that half behind. Fortis, the head of the rebellion, is on the train to the prison, and apparently he can pack plenty of high explosives about his person with nobody noticing. It actually starts to be embarrassing for them how ineffective they are, and when Doll insists, "I've escaped a military complex," it becomes unintentionally amusing as well. In truth, it's Lucas who is the most effective of all these ineffective antagonists, because he tells his mother what they're up to, but then he helps them escape before she comes anyway. His flip-flopping is really not good either. After refusing to escape with the others, he then meets them at the Icon anyway, and though there is no less than 5 pages of dialogue between him and Doll at the Icon, there is nothing in it whatsoever that explains his sudden decision to help her, or equally, Doll's decision to trust him. Without a convincing human antagonist, we're left to turn to our alien invaders for any sort of peril or threat. But despite their cities-spanning powers of instant life and death, the aliens are completely passive, taking no active part in the story. Such is the aliens' inaction that I actually started to wonder if there was a twist in this tale with a touch of the War of the Worlds, and the aliens had long since died out, and the humans were just using their reputation to further their own power. However, at the very finale, they do turn up after the children destroy the LA Icon, but their death ray fails to work and then they simply leave. It's a little bit sad really, and the final nail in the coffin of what was a fairly interesting setup. And unfortunately, the novel is full of examples of the writer trying to contrive a situation that even a cursory examination makes seem odd. Doll meets a fortune teller on her LA excursion, and there's quite a lot of this, so I'm not going to read it all, but the fortune teller starts with what is likely some banter, with this not exactly a fortune telling, but more like a bit of life advice. Then there is this prediction, which she takes literally, and he laughs it off, but he may well have been referring to Ro and Lucas rather than her actual brothers here. Her thoughts turn to Lucas, and then the fortune teller says, "What about the boy?" he asks. It's as if he can read my mind. What about him? What does my hand say? But at that, the old man tips his head back and laughs, raising his hands. I can't tell you. Time up now. Shoot me. So it is written. What? Shoot me. That is all that remains. He smiles and rolls his eye backs until all I can see are the whites. I don't understand. He closes his eyes. A bullet rips through his chest, spattering me with red flesh. Another whizzes past my head. So knowing that he was going to die, he went through that whole exchange of the banter at the start that was useless to everybody. He even has time to repeat himself twice here at the end, rather than simply answer her question. Knowing that you were going to die, would you not be, right, I'm going to impart all the knowledge that I need to at this point, rather than just faff about like an idiot? Could he not at least say, duck, at the end here? The whole novel is full of this sort of nonsense. Their escape from the embassy begins like this. I feel a surge of adrenaline and anxiety. The simpers are getting closer. He's right, we have to go now. Though there is no evidence whatsoever of any kind of effective security in this complex so far, perhaps the urgency here is justified, though it's interesting that the now could perhaps have had more emphasis on it. Things progress with Fortis exploding an escape hole in the wall. I step towards the hole, but Fortis intercepts me, grabbing my arm before I can go through it. One more thing. Though I know we have to go, the simpers won't be far behind. Yes, he quite literally stops her to say, stop! We have to hurry. He then carries on talking as if hurrying isn't a thing that's relevant in this situation. Here's the thing. There's one part of this plan that you're not going to like. Fortis looks me squarely in the eye. You're not going to survive the escape. In fact, you're going to have to let Hux kill you. Hux being the computer Dr. Orwell Bradley Huxley Clark, named after a string of science fiction writers, but actually owing a bigger debt to Heinlein's Moon as a harsh mistress than any of them credited here. But back to the scene. This then, still standing around, discuss who might have made the computer, with Fortis saying, there's a story there, love, a good one. But first, I have a little question for you. What? Can you shoot a gun? Without another word, he shoves a rebellion pistol into my hand and pushes me through the hole in the wall, hard. There's a loud thump and the wall next to where I was standing turns to rubble. And of course you wouldn't need this hard tacked on the end if you simply used a synonym for pushes that implies that, something like shoved, which you've already used in that sentence. But suddenly after this lengthy exchange that they could have had much later in a much safer location, they're now finally facing some security. And of course it's important to Fortis to delay her for this part of the conversation, because what he actually explains is that they're going to fake computer records to make the bad guys think she's dead. But if you had 4 captives and 3 of them escaped, and then one of them showed up as dead on your computer records, you just immediately stop looking for them, right? Especially once you check the ID on the body that you found. I mean, you do have a body, right? Oh, you don't. So this is just a stupid, pointless discussion that's just stupid and pointless. But at least now she's armed with this rebellion pistol that he held her up to give to her, she can fight back a bit like Princess Leia perhaps, yes? Nope, she never fires it. So even that bit is just a pointless waste of time as well. In truth, the writing for how bad this was going to get should have been on the wall, almost literally, really early in the novel. One of the textual inserts gives detail about one of the 4 classifications of the anti-icons. Ro is a rager, icon furoris. A rager can use fury to channel incredible physical strength, as adrenaline gone wild. There are rumours that a rager can wield the mind in a similar fashion, like a reset button on a hard drive, and glut the nervous system with such chaos that it shuts down. It is believed that a rager has a shorter than average lifespan. I wonder how many hard drives have a reset button. Anyway, this is just another Chekhov's gun, literally like Doe's actual gun, that is never fired. But this never convinces either as any kind of scientist's journal because of this nonsense analogy. Journals don't do that. Science fiction writers do. Good ones might even study broadside ballads or war propaganda so that they can come up with better slogans than this crap from the same page. Rager, come fight for us, shut down the projects, liberate the people, let freedom ring. Or this one from the similarly styled data on another type of anti-icon child, the Freak. Freak, come out and help us fight. Your mind can set us free. We need you on our side. Well, if you're trying to recruit somebody to your side, perhaps calling them a freak shouldn't be your opening gambit. In conclusion, this is just another sad entry in a long line of Hunger Games young adult dystopian cash-ins. A decent premise and a reasonably interesting protagonist for this kind of novel are wasted in a book that fails to include any kind of antagonist worthy of the name. The glut of Chekhov's guns unfired and the fact that there are 13 icons and only one is destroyed here suggests the presence of a future series of these, but the quality here suggests that they're probably not worth your time. Further, the feebleness of the aliens and their collaborators belies the setup and suggests that the future novels like this one will be more angst and drama than engrossing or engaging science fiction. If you're 12 or 13, you may enjoy this, but only give it your time if you've already read The Hunger Games as much as you can tolerate. Otherwise, skip it. For grown-ups, I think there's very little here to catch or hold your attention. Stohl seems instead to be trying to promote the idea that Cami Garcia was the talent behind their partnership, demonstrating a real inability to create tension or excitement by dragging down her action scenes with pages of unnecessary and poorly placed dialogue. So there's plenty of choice in this genre and therefore no real need to waste your time reading this subpar offering. Not recommended. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one, especially if you like and subscribe. Bye. Fortis is a genius. Because icons interfere with chemical reactions, he designed the detonation to work incredibly fast before the icon's fields can interfere. Once the detonator is tripped, the chain reaction will take over and everything will go off before the icon can shut it down. It won't know what's hit it. Something's wrong. The first blast should have come by now. I staggered the timing, one supporting leg at a time. Just read The Hunger Games twice.